the chest, one of the most iconic and masculine features on a man when developed properly. Here are the 3 best tips plus the best exercises and methods that I use to grow my chest. Now make sure you do not skip any of these 3 or you will not grow an aesthetic chest and you won't be able to do this. All right, tip 1 is going to be form and technique. We're starting with the most important tip of them all and probably the biggest factor why you might not be seeing the chest growth that you want. This was definitely my main issue for the first probably 1 to 2 years of my training. If you're constantly getting sore shoulders or you're even getting pretty good shoulder gains, but your chest is just severely lacking, whatever you do, you cannot get it to grow, then form and technique is probably the main issue you need to address first. I also see this with clients quite often. The training program, the consistency in the gym, and the amount of actual chest work is set up really good to see great progress, but the chest just always seems to be lagging. And that's simply because you just don't know how to use good form yet, or you can't put your ego to the side and just cop it on the chin that maybe you're not as strong as you think you are yet. But that will change, especially when you start to use good form and proper technique 100% of the time. Here's the most common mistakes that I made when I first started out and the ones I see with new clients. So the first one is the chest caving in and the shoulders rounding and starting to take over. When this happens, you're taking all of the tension off the chest and it's going mainly through the front of your shoulders. Not only is this bad as you may get injured, but it's also taking all of that chest growth away. The good news is it's a simple fix. Simply lock your shoulder blades back and down. What I like to think about is the back of my shoulder living in my back pocket and then simply keeping your chest up tall towards the roof as much as you can. The second biggest mistake is shortened range of motion, aka half reps. Guys, just put your ego to the side. I promise no one actually cares about how much you're lifting or not, and it looks a lot better if you're doing full range of motion. Now, not only is this bad if you're doing half reps because you're increasing the risk of injury, but there is also studies to show that the bottom, so the stretched position, the lengthened position of the movement is where we can make the most gains. So just make sure that you are using that full range of motion on every exercise, on every set. Tip number 2, volume, frequency, intensity. Now I'm bunching all 3 of these together. I promise I'm gonna make this super simple to understand. It's not actually complex at all. So volume equals how many sets you do for chest each week. Intensity equals how much weight do you use, aka how hard do you train chest. And frequency equals how many times per week do you train chest. Now why would you care about this? Because now you're using perfect form and technique. This is the next thing that's going to determine whether you make good chest gains or not. Now I just want you to keep it super simple and just focus on 2 things. The first one is going to be the intensity. So basically make sure that whenever you train chest, each set is taken very close to failure with that perfect form. A rough guide that I like to use is if you finish the set and you feel like you could have got another 3 reps or more, don't count that set. It was too easy and it's not going to be challenging enough to make your chest grow. The second is, of course, the frequency. Now, I don't necessarily want you to focus on the volume too much at the moment because if you nail the intensity and the frequency, the volume will kind of handle itself. But to give you a rough guide on volume, if you are super interested, in between 10 to 20 sets per week is generally a good guide to be in. But like I said, you're going to be focusing on frequency. So what that means is how many times you train chest per week. Now, if you're only training chest once per week at the moment and you go to training twice per week, I guarantee give that a few months and you will see tremendous chest growth. When I swapped from a bro split, aka only training every muscle group once per week, to a push-pull leg split or training every muscle group twice per week, I saw the biggest chest growth in the first 3 to 4 years of training that I had ever seen, and that was only within a 6-month time period. The reason I think this will work perfectly for you, let's say you're currently doing 4 to 5 chest exercises on a Monday, and each exercise you do about 3 to 4 sets. So you're doing roughly, let's call it 16 sets per week for chest. Even if you train like an animal and you think you're an absolute beast, after say those first 10 hard working sets, the next 6 sets are probably not going to be as good. They're still going to feel hard because you're fatigued, but your general fatigue in your chest and just general fatigue in your body from the training session is going to be accumulated. So therefore, those last 6 sets or 5 or however many you want to call it aren't going to be as good as if you split that 16 sets into 2 sessions. So for example, let's say on the first session you did 8 hard working sets for chest, and then on your second chest session a few days later you do another 8 hard working sets. What do you think is going to be more beneficial, and what do you think you're going to be able to lift more weight with? Do you think you'll be able to lift more weight if you split it over 2 instead of 1? Probably. And we all know progressive overload is the main key driver for building muscle. So if you can lift more, split into 2 sessions, why not do that? And to be honest, the other reason is because let's say you train chest on a Monday, you don't need a full week to recover. Tip number 3, exercise selection. Now this is third because although everyone wants to go straight for the 3 best chest exercises that you've never done before, without using good form and technique and getting your frequency and volume and how hard you train in the right spot, it doesn't really matter what exercises you're doing. To keep it super simple, there are 3 parts of the chest you want to focus on: the upper, the middle, and the lower. Upper focused exercises would generally be anything incline. So incline machine press, incline bench press, incline dumbbell press, incline Smith press, etc. Middle focused exercises would generally be all of your flat presses and horizontal flies. Lower focused exercises are generally going to be anything pressing or a fly motion that is downward, aka high to low. So dips and high to low cable flies and things like that. Now for an even training program and just for optimal chest growth, I personally recommend trying to have all 3 variations in your program. Honestly, just pick the ones that you like the most and that you can feel the most in your chest and stick with those. For me personally, it looks like this. The first chest session might have an incline press with a machine or dumbbells to focus on the upper portion, and then a standard chest height cable fly to focus on the middle portion. The second chest session might have a flat press with dumbbells or a traditional bench press to focus on the middle portion, and then a dip or maybe a high to low cable fly of some sort to focus on the lower portion. That way you're simply covering all bases across the week. Now, I honestly also think that it's highly important that you actually enjoy your training and your program for long-term chest gains. There is also a solid argument why you should keep some of those chest movements we just spoke about in your program for a long period of time, aka definitely do not switch your exercises up every week. That's probably the biggest mistake that I ever made when I first started training, and I highly recommend getting at least a couple of them and sticking with them for at least a few months at least. Over the last 10 plus years of training myself and thousands of clients, I've noticed that there is a balancing act of what's optimal versus what's enjoyable. So you may hear on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever that a lot of people will be like, bench press sucks for chest gains, bro. You can't feel it, blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing. If you love bench pressing, you feel this in your chest and you really enjoy your program, your workouts, and you look forward to doing that, then there is nothing wrong with doing bench press in your program. I personally love bench press. I think it's probably the funnest movement to do in the gym. Every time it's in my program, I highly look forward to it. It is very fun and enjoyable to progress on. It's very satisfying. And to sprinkle in a touch of bro science, I've personally never seen anyone with a very impressive bench press that has a tiny chest. I'm just saying, success leaves clues. So hey, take what you want from that, but that's my advice on it. Bonus tips: tracking progress and progressive overload. It honestly baffles me how many guys that I speak to that are still not using a training program, tracking their progress, or making sure they're using progressive overload over the months. Also, the biggest mistake you can probably do is thinking you're gonna remember the weights that you're doing on every exercise for every set every week. That's not gonna happen. So if you're not doing any of that, then start doing that today. I promise your chest growth will explode over the next few months if you start doing that. If you don't know what progressive overload means, it simply means to do more over time. So simply lift more weight or do more reps over time. Bonus tip number 2, high protein. If you're not eating enough protein to support muscle growth, you will not make chest gains. It's honestly as simple as that. For a rough guide, try to eat about 2 grams of protein per kg of body weight per day. Bonus tip 3, consistency. This is another one that's commonly overlooked. You can do everything perfectly that we just spoke about. You can have that pretty perfect chest program. You can track it. You can use progressive overload. But if you don't do this consistently over weeks, months, and years, your chest will simply never grow. This is another common one that I speak to with guys all the time. Yeah, I just went on holiday and I just didn't train for 3 weeks. And then, yeah, I got a little bit sick and then kind of got slack and, had another couple of weeks off. Use those tips, use those exercises and that framework we just went through and just stick with it over time. I promise your chest will grow. And don't fall for any magical chest hacks, magical chest exercises, because there is none. Hopefully that video was helpful. If you guys want more detail on some of this stuff, let me know, because I'm never quite sure how detailed to go on it. And if you want a full guide to building an aesthetic body, then check this video out right here. It covers absolutely everything you need to know.